it is always a pleasure to welcome our good friend Congressman John Rose to the program to talk about budgets and Washington, D.C., and plenty of other matters. Congressman Rose, it's a pleasure to speak with you. How are you, John?
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me on the show today.
Well, it's always a pleasure to do so. I want to ask you about budgets. Obviously you voted for the budget. I guess what are we calling it? The budget resolution package? Is that a fair way to characterize it?
Just budget resolution.
Talk to us about. Obviously you were joined by 217 of your colleagues. Only one Republican. And we kind of understand where Thomas Massey's coming from at this point. He just has drawn a line in the sand and he refuses to step over it under any circumstances. But walk the people of the state of Tennessee through your process in deciding that this moves the ball forward enough that you can support it.
Sure. I think, first of all, I would say this is what the president has asked for, and obviously the American people gave him a very strong mandate with the election results last November. And so, I think that, frankly, it's Congress's job to help the president put in place his conservative vision for restoring the greatness of America. And when he gives this a thumbs up, it seems to me that that's the signal that we need. Someone has to make the play call. And in this case, he endorsed this action that's been being, crafted here for several weeks. And so that's enough for me. Obviously, if I, was doing it, it might be somehow different. But at the end of the day, we have to get to the majority in the current House. And so, I'm going to take the president's indication of how he wants us to do, to proceed, and I'm going to follow that. So then more broadly beyond that, I would just say, the features of this budget resolution are that, number one, it keeps us from having a $4.5 trillion tax increase that would hit Americans, and particularly small businesses and working Americans, particularly hard. And so I think that's an important feature of it. And it goes a long way toward starting to bend the spending curve in Washington. And frankly, it sets the stage for us to be able to push through the ultimate budget reconciliation process, which will come here in a few weeks as the follow-on to this, that will actually start to implement so many of the president's priorities. And so for me, that's really the answer. We can certainly wade into the weeds about it, but I'm disappointed that we have, it was necessary. Ultimately, everyone got there except for Thomas, and Thomas is a friend, and I like Thomas, and you're right, he comes from a little bit different place. But, my message to Thomas would be, what is it that could have been accomplished that would have been better? And so why would you vote with 214 Democrats against an opportunity to move the ball forward?
Congressman John Rose, our guest on the Matt Murphy Show on Super Talk. So off the top of your head, this is not a gotcha, but can you recall, or do you know, the last time that Congress passed a budget before the fiscal year was done on September 30th?
Let's see. So I think that's going to be a while. Probably they did it when Diane Black, my predecessor, was in the House. So I think they did it actually in 2017, that they passed it in, and then, they used the reconciliation process that year. So I think they were doing that not in arrears, but prospectively. I'm pretty sure they were.
Well, I saw the 217. The one that I had was 1997, John. One way or the other, it has been a long time. Are you hopeful? Because obviously, for those who don't know, Congressman Rose and I are talking about a budget that was due last September. And I'm not knocking y'all. I know that you're trying your best. And obviously now you have a president in Donald J. Trump that is advancing the ball forward quite aggressively with his Department of Government Efficiency. And I'll ask you about that in just a moment. But are you hopeful that once we get this resolution process behind us, and we're certainly hopeful that the Senate and the House will come together in joint committee, are you hopeful that we can get the ball moving on next year's? I know that it's just, almost March, but it feels like we better get going on that if we want to get back to a semblance of regular order on all of this.
I think that's right, and I think you're right to note that when you say we should have done this by last September, we should have passed the budget resolution last spring,
right?
In January, February, March, that time frame, and then the appropriations process, which is what follows. So think of the budget resolution as essentially the plan, and then the appropriations is actual execution of the plan. And so we've now passed the plan, and that sets the stage for us to then pass the execution through using this process called reconciliation. And the reason that matters is because on the Senate side, it gets you to where you just need a majority instead of a supermajority in order to pass the appropriations. And so obviously we can pass it just with Republican votes if all of our Republicans will stick together.
And do you believe that these appropriation bills will happen singularly as opposed to getting them?
No, they'll come out of committee. So the authorizing committees will take these up now, riding to the level and the mark that is in this budget resolution that just passed, and the plan then is they will all get wrapped up into a single item that will be the budget reconciliation bill, hopefully to pass on the House side, then go to the Senate and hopefully pass there as well. And then what that will do is it will keep taxes where they are, which of course was so important to the economic growth that we saw during the first Trump administration. Only cut short really by COVID, and then of course the economy kept moving forward after that. And then I think also here will be the funding for defense, funding to complete the border wall, and to give the funding to President Trump to execute on his plan to get violent illegal immigrants out of our country, and a host of other things like that, and putting in place pretty significant 10-year level of cuts that will begin to happen. And then you're right. The question is, can we turn right around and pivot from that and come back with what would be the 2026 budget resolution and reconciliation process? So we can do two bites at the apple. The plan is to get all of the policy provisions that we can around the president's priorities that have, monetary and spending attached to them, to get that done now as a part of this first effort, the one big beautiful bill, if you will, and then come back and pick up, whatever loose ends there are with another reconciliation process later this year.
Congressman John Rose is with us right now on the Matt Murphy Show. Congressman, obviously DOGE has been very busy in the first month plus of the new Trump administration. They are clearly walking up to the line of congressional authority. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but do you believe that they have gotten to the line? Do you believe that certain aspects of what they are attempting to do need to be codified by the Congress? And do you at all think that they have crossed to the line in terms of executive authority versus congressional authority?
Well, I think that's a kind of a fuzzy line. So I guess, I'm not sure I have enough visibility to know. There'll probably be some mistakes made. But again, I think the American people, the president telegraphed what he wanted to do, and I think the American people want to see him supported in doing that. And so the other side is pushing back. The part of the story that I think is underreported, or perhaps not reported at all in most venues, is that what we had the Biden administration doing in those last several months of trying to spend every dollar they could, trying to flush money out the door as fast as they could, trying to hire as many ideologues into open government positions as they could. And so, this is not a new exercise where the outgoing administration tries to stack the deck as much as they can, and then the incoming administration has to try to ferret all that out and stop it. And so, we do have the difference, I suppose, is that we have the richest man in the world who is, made himself available to the president to help, ferret out waste, fraud, and abuse. And I think you see him doing it with exacting efficiency, and that upsets the other side, and they're going to fight back, and that's their prerogative to do so. I think they do so, though, at the potential peril of showing the American people their cards. I mean, they're advocating for things that the American people want to see done, which is to eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse in our government and prioritize spending that actually is meant to accomplish the goals that the American people want. So I think there's a real peril for the Democrats. The president, I think, has really got their number. He is picking out issues like getting men out of women's sports that are 80% issues.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Democrats are reflexively, against that. Just because they've got this Trump and now Musk derangement syndrome, and so they just reflexively decide they're against these things without really pulling back and evaluating, wait a second, if 80+% of the American people are for it, maybe it's not a good place to be on the other side of it. And so I think the president has that mandate, and I hope they keep moving forward. And I know firsthand from the things that we've gotten involved in, there have been a few places where the cuts maybe affected something, that was unintentional. And the administration has moved quickly and swiftly in the cases that I'm aware of to fix those problems. And so, I give them great credit for that. And we also have to keep in mind, they've been on the job 30 days, a few more than 30 days
right.
at this point, 37 days. And so, they don't have their team fully on the ground yet. Many of the positions have not yet been confirmed. And so I think it's really encouraging that the president is as well organized. His team is coming in and are able to take these things on.
You're saying it exactly right, John. I mean, at this point, the President Donald Trump could tell the American people not to drink motor oil, and liberals would immediately respond by demanding that everyone drink motor oil. I mean, it's just, it's ridiculous. All right. So, John, in the few minutes that we have left, I want to address this. Do you know what happens when I type your name, John Rose, into the Google machine right now?
Well, you may get a picture of my son making funny faces on the internet. I don't know.
You get some of that. Here, let me, headline. WSMV4, Tennessee Congressman John Rose announces run for governor. Williamson Herald, Representative John Rose announces run for governor. WKRN News 2, Tennessee Congressman John Rose actively making plans for gubernatorial run. WZTZ-TV, Congressman John Rose announces he's running for governor. And it goes on, John. I could go on, but I don't want to waste your time. John, have you announced that you are running for governor?
I think the one headline there that got it closest to right is that I'm actively making plans. And so that's the way I would say it right now. It is my anticipation and strong belief that I will decide to run, and we're making plans in that direction.
Well, I mean, tell us what goes into that decision-making process. And, if you can, I'm not asking you to make if you want to make an announcement on the Matt Murphy Show, John, you are welcome. But I'm not asking you to make that official announcement necessarily, but walk me through, what that process is like and what your expectation on time frame is.
Well, we're moving as swiftly as we can, and it's really about kind of dotting all the I's and crossing the T's. There's certainly some people that you'd like to visit with and talk with, before, kind of showing due regard and respect for their opinions and their views. And then there is just a lot of infrastructure that has to be put in place, a lot of kind of paperwork to be done. You want to do this right so that you don't stub your toe. And so we're assembling the team, if you will, and want to be ready when we come to the point to make that decision and announce it to the public that we're ready, and we're ready to communicate what my vision is as a candidate, and ready to make the case to the people of Tennessee that I can be the next governor of Tennessee and lead the state and address the issues that are of importance to Tennessee. Well,
and when, as you talk to your family, as you talk to your inner circle about this decision-making process, and once again, if you're close to finalizing that decision and making the official announcement, what leads you in that direction? What do you believe are the priorities that the next governor of the state needs to focus on?
Well, very good question, and there are some significant ones. I think it would be easy for us to rest on our laurels in Tennessee. We have low taxes, low debt, low regulation, a hospitable business environment, and just a hospitable social environment. That's what is causing so many people to move to Tennessee. That's what causes us to appreciate that we live in our state. But we're growing quickly, and, the world is changing around us. And so we've got to be careful, I think, as we move forward to make sure that we safeguard what makes Tennessee special. And so I think the next governor, the next 8 years beyond Governor Lee's administration will be a critical time frame where we've got to, seize the opportunity from the foundation that we find ourselves on, which is a good place to be, but make sure then we make careful decisions. And so to kind of just rip off the things that I think are the most important, I think education is still a critical need for our state to get right. We can't continue to not be a high-performing state in terms of education. The good news is we've seen a lot of positive steps taken to get us down that path, and we see the pay dirt. The recent scores indicate that some success is being achieved, and so, but we want to build on that. And so the good news for Tennesseans is, we're doing well, and the better news is we can do even better if we just continue to make careful decisions. Second, infrastructure is a problem. Anybody who drives on our streets and highways and interstates knows this, and so we've got to figure out how we're going to get in front of that. Again, Governor Lee has taken some important steps, but we've got more that we've got to do. We've got a healthcare access problem in our state, particularly in rural areas where we have a lot of counties that don't have access to emergency care. We've had a lot of rural hospitals closed, and so we've got a lot that has to happen there. We have a mental health crisis in our state, and that's really true across the country. So we've got things to do there. So access to health care, including mental health care, I think is an important thing. And then this next issue is one that we haven't had to think about in the past, but we've got to think very strategically about energy in our state. We've always had TVA doing a great job there, and we kind of just don't think about it. You flip the switch, you expect the lights to come on. But increasingly, there's a challenge around that, and so we've got to make sure that we are doing everything the state can do to foster and encourage and provide the environment so that TVA can continue to be successful and our local power distributors can succeed. And then finally, all of that feeds into economic development. And the way I would say it there is we've got to be more choosy going forward in terms of what we do in the economic development arena. We've always been chasing the opportunity to bring jobs to our state. Sometimes we found, though, that we bring employers to our state that immediately turn around and want to tell us what our values should be. And so we've got to be careful about that as a state. We've got to make sure that when we bring someone into our state that they're not coming here to try to turn us into California.
Well, so, it's a question well answered, John. And I'm sorry I don't mean to cut you short, but I'm way over time. But I can. This is my headline. You ready for my headline? You ready for my headline?
Yes, sir.
John Rose is not officially announcing that he is in fact running for governor of the state of Tennessee in 2026. You don't have to respond to that. That's Matt talking, not John talking. Congressman, it is a pleasure. I know you'll be back with us very, very soon, and I know you'll make that announcement on your time, and we appreciate you giving us some of your time tonight.
Thank you, Matt. It's a great honor and privilege to represent the people of Tennessee.